so coordinated. Anyway, thank you for coming. I know that there was a little confusion about what time this meeting was going to start, and I'm glad to see you all here. We are going to be recording this, and I am going to make my typewritten notes available, and we will be putting those into the section when you go to our webpage, and then click on nonprofits, and then click on community grants. The recording and these notes will be there if you want to reference them. We're keeping you all muted right now because there's a large crowd that's expected. But if you could use that chat function, which if you haven't used it before, you'll find it in the ribbon at the bottom of your screen, and then just send the chat, but just send it to Alicia, please, and she is going to be the mistress of chat, and I'll break very intentionally at about 4 points during this presentation, just to see what questions might have come in since the last break. So just direct them to Alicia, and I think it'll work. So I know that every single one of you on this presentation is working at least triple time, if not 10-tuple time, whatever that is. I just commend you and honor you for all of the amazing hours you're putting in on behalf of the people that you're serving. I'm going to start to cry over you right now, my God. Anyway, but thank you for doing that. And we're no different. We're right now trying to juggle about 6 things that affect nonprofits. Alicia actually spent the afternoon on one of about 4 or 5 different scholarship meetings we're having. Many of you know about our COVID-19 recovery grants. If you are thinking of applying, those guidelines will be posted tomorrow morning. If you had looked at them before, they're very, very similar to the ones that had been there, but we realized after we gave the first round of awards that we needed more clarity in certain things about what our priorities really are, what we probably can't fund, and so forth. But you'll see those tomorrow. The deadline will be next Monday, the 13th, and the review committee is meeting on the 17th, so there'll be a quick turnaround on those as well. We're also, as you know, revising this community grants process at sort of the speed of light. The board met last week. They approved things in theory. The staff wrote the guidelines, the application, and the review process, finalized those yesterday. So you are getting information that's less than 24 hours old. And we think it's going to work, and we'll have those guidelines up by the end of the week, maybe even earlier. Alicia, whom you see on the screen there, is an amazing woman and works at the speed of light. We're also trying to create the nonprofit support group that we're working with the ICE lab on. Our next meeting for that one, and you can sign yourself on, there's the link in today's news you can use, is going to be Kelly from RMBL talking about finance and the SBA in horrifying times like this. And we'll be meeting bi-weekly after that. And so we're also trying to keep you posted. I know that your inboxes are probably groaning with all sorts of awesome information that's no doubt really, really, really helpful if you had the time to read it. And so what we're trying to do is just boil down the things that we think are most useful to you. And Lauren is posting them in the Gunnison Valley Nonprofit Community Forum Facebook page if you're not a member of that. And it says it's a closed group, but Alicia is our gatekeeper. And if you ask to be in, she will let you in. But we're posting things there that we hope will be useful. For example, I was just on a webinar today that the National Nonprofit Council did, trying to help you figure out what in the heck is going on with the CARES Act and the various family leaves and all of this stuff. It was really good and really succinct, and as soon as we get the link to that recording, we'll be posting that. So keep your eye there. So that's kind of where we're at, but this particular meeting is just going to be about the community grants. If you have COVID recovery grants, talk to me, but this recording is, or this presentation is just the community grants. Okay, so the first thing is, for those of you who got project grants last year, and I think I contacted everybody to see if you had any money left over, and a few of you did, the board has approved your converting anything that you've got left over into general operating support, meaning you don't have to use it for the project that you got funded for. You can use it for anything that you're facing right now. Pam is working with our attorney on just doing the contract amendments, but you can be assured they've been approved, and you'll be getting your contract letter as soon as we can. But that said, your final report on those are still due on April 30th. If you got a grant of any kind last year, you know that the project grant or the reports were due on April 30th, and they still are. The board did consider the possibility of eliminating final reports, but that's not a best practice because it doesn't allow us to be accountable, and so forth and so on. So you're going to use the same final report form that you always used, but you can be as short and succinct as you want, and we are totally fine with it. I don't think anyone would even mind if it was just 1 or 2 sentences. So there just needs to be something there, but short and sweet, just get the darn thing over with, because you do have to have submitted that final report in order to be eligible to apply on May 15th. So I'm going to first give an overview of what's new this year, and then we'll break, and if you've got any immediate questions, and then I'm going to go through the specifics, the stuff that you will actually be answering and that we're going to expect you, I'll give you the 4 questions that we're going to ask you, and then I'm going to tell you how we're going to score. So I'll take some breaks in there if you have questions. So there's 3 sort of big ideas that the board approved. The first one is that they suspended the sit-out rule, and there are some of you on the call who I know would have had to sit out this year, but you don't have to. Chances are we'll ask you to sit out next year and try to recalibrate then, but we're not looking any further than next week right now, probably most of us tomorrow. So the sit-out rule has been suspended. And here's the key thing for those of you on the call who are nonprofits. You don't have to make a choice between project support or general operating support this year. All of you will automatically ask for general operating support. What general operating support, a lot of people think that that means administrative overhead, and it doesn't. What we mean by general operating support is you ask us for, I'm making this up, $3,000, and if you get the $3,000, you can do anything you want with it. You can use it for scholarships, you can use it for building, you can use it for supplies, you can use it for meeting payroll or benefits or anything. You don't have to have, we know that the world is changing every hour, every day, and you can't possibly predict where you're going to be needing the money next year. So we're going to take that pressure off of you and just say, if you're a nonprofit, you'll ask for general operating support, and I'll tell you what you need to supply us in a minute. But if you have any questions about what general operating support means, just go ahead and text them to Alicia, and we'll take a break in a second, and I'll ask if you've got questions. So that's the key thing. Those of you on the call, and there are a couple who are with public organizations. And by the way, Ricardo, I see that you're there. Karen, both groups from Montrose. I think Janice from Denver is on the call. You also will be asking for general operating support, but it'll only be for the Gunnison County portion of your budget. And I'll come back and give you specifics in a minute. So if you're with a public entity, which would be any county office, the public library, Gunnison Watershed School District, or Western, you will only ask for project support. Now, I'm looking to see who's on the call, because this has always been a nightmare about what do we mean. Some public entities, for example, the Nurturing Parenting Program at the county, that office does one thing, which is the Nurturing Parenting Program. So in that case, their project support is going to look a darn like general operating support. In a way, this is just kind of a legal wording thing that you don't really need to worry about. Because what it means, general operating support means we give the grant applicant, which would be Western or Gunnison County, general operating support, and they can use it wherever they want. Well, we don't want a grant that's intended for nurturing parenting to go into the county's general fund. So by requiring it to be a project grant, it guarantees that the money comes to you, not to the mega fund at Western or the county or the library's general fund. If you're in that situation and you have questions, let's just chat about that offline if you're confused. But the gist is, all nonprofits, no matter who you are, whether you've been funded before, whether you're in a sit-out rule, are going to ask for general operating this year. All public entities are going to ask for project support. If anyone is applying through a fiscal agent, that will also apply to you, but I don't think anyone on this call is. So I will ask, because I know some of you on this call have not applied before, we do ask that if you're a first timer, please talk to me. It's not a gatekeeping thing. I'm not going to say, no, you can't apply. But what I'm trying, by doing this, I'm trying to help people who haven't been through our grants process before be as competitive as you possibly can be. So I'm not trying to just throw a roadblock in your way. We're trying to be helpful. So at this point, Alicia, have you found any questions, anything that isn't clear? Okay, with that, I'm going to go on and tell you what you can expect to present to us. You go where you've always gone, to our website. You click on the nonprofits tab, you click on the community grants link, and there you're going to see the guidelines, the application, a couple of tools like this recording and stuff. And we're also going to post the review criteria, so you'll know how the evaluators will score you. We're trying to be as transparent as we possibly can. And so, you know, in a way, somebody used the phrase where the plane has taken off and now we're building the wings. So we're kind of in that situation. We really believe this new application is going to work. We really believe that the guidelines are totally crystal clear. In advance, if there's a glitch, we're sorry, and contact either me or Alicia and we'll work it out. So we rely on you to let us know where the glitches are. Otherwise, we just won't know, and that won't be helpful to anybody. So you'll go there. And so here's what is going to be included. Whoops, that's okay. My notes just covered up my camera. Here's what's you're gonna find after you've read the guidelines and go to the application form. There's going to be, if you've done this before, you know we usually ask for a bunch of information about you, and that'll be no different, except it'll be a little bit shorter. So there you're going to be asked for your legal name, your DBA if you have one, your employer ID number, contact information, the year you were founded, and then two numbers. One is the number of local people that you typically impact in a given year. We're saying typically in a given year because next year, who knows whom we'll be impacting and how. But give us your best guess about the number of people you usually impact that are local, and then your best guess about the number of people, visitors you impact. Maybe we'll have visitors this summer. That would be a good thing. But if you also impact visitors, just let us know that. This is not a judgmental thing. If your mission is to work with 10 developmentally disabled people, and that's it, and you don't work with visitors, the right answer is 10. We're not looking for a big number there. We're looking for whom you affect in terms of your own mission. So those are easy, you know, and then we ask you for your year founded. So we get a sense of how skilled you are at presenting your programs, how new you are. So those are all things you can answer in your sleep, right? Well, at least I hope so. And then you're going to be asked for your mission statement, and then you're going to be asked 4 questions. And here they are. Each of them is only going to be 125 words. The first question is, whom do you serve and what is the need of that group of people? And I believe, Alicia, that's literally how it's been worded in the application. So even though the application isn't posted, that's what it's going to say. Whom do you serve and what is the need? A helpful hint, the more specific you are, the more persuasive you're going to be. In other words, instead of telling us that there are a lot of hungry kids in the valley, give us a sense of how many kids that are, that you're talking about. And or if you're talking about the number of immigrants in the valley, give us your best estimate of the number of people that we're talking about. The more specific you can be, the better. And what we've found is in this question, you probably can't have too much data. Would you say that's true, Alicia? I mean, you know, don't drown us in just number after number just for the sake of it. And don't spend your time doing tons and tons and tons of research. You don't have the time. But you know whom you serve and what the need is. So show us. I will say that numbers make it really powerful to say that we serve young parents of toddlers isn't going to give the reviewers the same picture, the same emotional edge as to say there's 250 households in poverty that have kids of younger than 3. I mean, that's going to get the reviewers saying, oh my God. So the tip here is create an emotional response with numbers to the extent that you can. Give us mini stories. You only have 125 words, but you can do it. The second question is, what do you do and what difference do you believe that you've made? Again, if you've got numbers, that would be helpful, but we realize that, you know, training young parents to be better parents, you may not be able to measure that difference, but you can give us your belief, maybe a tiny little story to tell us the difference you've made. So question number 2, what do you do and what difference have you made? Question number 3, how is COVID-19 affecting your organization right now? There's no right answer here. Some of you may appropriately say it isn't affecting us right now. But boy, if we aren't able to have our summer gala, we're not going to be able to do what we need to do in the fall. So we're not looking for any particular right answer. It just gives us a context of the things that you're facing now. Some of you may talk in terms of having to let your staff go. Some of you may talk in terms of you can't pay the utilities for the building you own and it's open and you don't have any income stream right now. Some of you may be talking about having to cancel your live events and morph into doing everything online, or trying to figure out how, as an art center teaching dance, you do dance online. I don't know what it's going to be, but how is it affecting you right now? Some of you I know are going through your reserves. Whatever it is, that's the right answer. We just want to know. And then the 4th question is, how do you think it might affect you in the year ahead? We know that we can't predict, but I think all of you have feelings in the pit of your stomach about what might happen if you don't have summer visitors, or what might happen if you do have summer visitors, but you'll learn about it at the very last minute. What might it look like in the year ahead? I want those of you who are in arts, recreation, and history, what we have made really explicit, and the board has made really explicit, and the board member who is chair of the grants committee is going to remind our reviewers again and again and again, is that we value equally all 8 of our categories. Those categories are arts and culture, health and human services, education, community development, Alicia, you may have history, athletics and recreation, and environment. And if I've gotten to 8, I've got them all, but I have a feeling I'm missing one.
Animal welfare.
Animal welfare, thank you. And I know Kathy's on the call. Sorry, Kathy. We value them all equally. Now, the thing is that the reviewers are human beings, and we know the hell that people are going through right now just trying to make ends meet. And at times like this, there's sometimes people who want to say, well, isn't the need for food more important than the need for history? And we're gonna try our very best to say the meaning of life in this valley is that we need all 8. It does mean, though, for the arts and culture, athletics and rec people, and maybe even environment and history, that there's probably going to be a special burden on you to make a powerful case for why you are needed here. And again, I'm more than happy to chat with you. No guarantees, of course, but we're not going to say to Carly Kenton, don't apply, because we're going to be feeding people rather than helping them reach the arts. So feel free to call me and talk about that if you'd like. So let's pause. I see there's somebody has a question. Alicia, do you want to just read it for everybody? But you need to unmute yourself. There you go.
Yeah, yes. So Rita asked, this is just for community grants right now. Yes.
Just community grants.
And then we can go ahead. Rachel had asked if we could copy and paste the 4 questions into the chat, which I can do if that would be valuable for everybody. And
sure.
Janice Mayer asks, when you say, how do we think, quote, it might affect us in the year ahead, just clarifying that we do mean COVID-19, and we do.
Yes, thank you. Thanks, Janice. Yes. I think never have we been more uncertain about what time will look like. Okay.
And that's all for now.
Sweet. So now I'm going to tell you about the financials and uploads. So those are your 4 narrative questions, 125 words each. So here, I'm going to first talk about nonprofits, first in-county nonprofits, and then out-of-county nonprofits. So first, in-county nonprofits. The general gist for all of you nonprofits is that we're going to ask you for your April 30th, 2020 budget to actual. We know that some of you won't have had a board meeting to formally approve those by May 15th or whenever you apply. That's okay. Don't worry about it. You know, right now, if we split hairs, we're just being dumb. So give us what your accountant has given you, even if the board hasn't approved it, for your budget to actual as of April 30th, 2020. Now, we're assuming that to give us your budget to actual, we're also going to be seeing the budget that you're working within, as much as anyone is working within a budget right now, for the current year. Again, I'm saying current year, because this is a little different from in the past. In the past, we've asked you for your projected budget for next year, and we know you can't possibly give us that. So we're saying the current year, the document you'll upload needs to show the the entire year's budget and the budget to actual in that year as far as you've gotten. And again, if you've gotten any questions, I mean, if your budget year started in January, that's fine. Give us the budget that your board approved and show us your budget to actual. If your grant year or budget year started last July, that's also fine. However far you've gotten in your current budget, that's what we want to see. We also want to see your balance sheet as of April 30th. So those are the two financial documents that we're asking for. Then as nonprofits, we're also asking you for those two things that you've always submitted to us off of the Secretary of State's website. The one saying that you are in good standing with the Secretary of State, and the other one saying that you're current with your charitable solicitations with the Secretary of State. If you're not sure how to get those, Alicia or I could help you, and it's not too hard to find if you go onto the Secretary of State's website and look under charitable organizations and put in your business name. So those certificates need to show that regardless of the date you submit, that your documents are current or will be current on the 15th of May, which is the grant deadline date. So we had a tragic situation last year where somebody had sent us their registration that was current on the date that they submitted it, but it was going to lapse the following week. And so we had to dock them a couple of points. So just make sure of that. And finally, if you want, you can upload 2 items. You don't have to, but you can. And please don't work on them. Upload something that you think might be powerful that you already have on hand. For example, a newspaper article that talks about how fantastic you are, or an annual report that you sent to your donors last year that looks really good. If you want to upload 2 things, you can, but we're not requiring. So let me recap. The nonprofits will give us a budget to actual that also includes your whole year's budget as of April 30th. We're talking about the current budget. We'll ask you for your balance sheet and your 2 documents from the Colorado Secretary of State. For those of you who are based in Montrose and Denver, when we say your current budget, we're referring only to that portion of your whole budget that's earmarked for Gunnison County. That can include a portion of your Montrose-based overhead. You know, so I'm looking at Ricardo's picture is right in the middle of my screen. So because Ricardo has to supervise operations in Montrose County or in Gunnison County, a portion of his time, a portion of the office overhead, travel time that he or somebody else from the office has to make to Gunnison is all allowable, but we're asking you only to give us your current budget for Gunnison County. Now I'm going to tell you what we expect if you're asking for a project, and then I'll pause for some more questions. So if you're a public entity asking for project support, the only thing that you need to provide us is a project budget. We don't need the budget for Gunnison County. We don't even need the budget for the whole Juvenile Services Division. If, for example, JCSAP's office is applying as the project, we only are looking for the project that GCSAP is applying for. And it's the old mantra for putting in a budget. Income and cash income have to equal cash expenses. So we look for both an income and an expenses side. They should be even. And if you budget in such a way that in-kind is included, remember that in-kind has to show up on both sides of the equation. And if that's not clear, I'm happy to work with any of you, but looking at the people who are online today, I suspect that that makes sense. So government entities, only a project budget, showing both income and expenses, and what your sources of income are likely to be. We know it's best guessing at this point, but what is it likely to be? If you don't include in-kind in your budget, that's fine. But like the nonprofits, you can feel free to annotate what you submit to us as much as you want. Feel free to have marginal notes. If you think there's something on there that simply isn't clear, like suppose Tina for mentors submits a budget for her whole operations and has absolutely no idea whether a certain federal grant is going to come through this year. She can just make a marginal note right there. So you don't have to write wads of explanation. And if you're submitting a project budget and don't include in-kind, but in-kind matters, for example, if a project that Dave is doing on historical elements in Gunnison County requires the use of 20 volunteers, and they may not be in the project budget, just a little note saying, in addition, we're using 20 volunteers. However you want to do it, but just give us information in the form of marginal notes if you think there's something that might not be clear. And finally, the only other thing that I would identify is if anyone is applying through a fiscal sponsor, the government people, you can add 2 optional uploads to if you want. Once again, you don't have to, but you can. And if you're applying through a fiscal sponsor, we just ask for a formal letter between you and your sponsor that acknowledges, in which the sponsor acknowledges that they are legally responsible for carrying out your project and being responsible for the finances. So let's pause there. And Alicia, what have we got? Or feel free to add something.
Yeah, so I was just answering a few questions folks sent me privately, which I think were okay, but Ben Poswak did have a question. So he says, do we need to wait to apply until after April 30th to have our most current financials? I would say, I mean, Ben, you can go ahead and get started. Certainly, the rest of the application hopefully won't take you long, but we know everybody's going to be in the same boat. So I would say that the extra 14, 15 days should be enough. Maryo, do you?
I'd agree, but if there's something, and like I say, it doesn't need to have been approved by your board. I mean, I know a lot of people meet like May 15th or quarterly or something like that. What we're just trying to look for is a snapshot of where you're at. If April 30th is a hardship, give us a call, but we're hoping it won't be.
And I think that's it. Oh, we just have one more here. So I'm going to go ahead and clarify the Secretary of State documents.
Great.
So the first one is the Certificate of Good Standing, which verifies that you're up to date with all of your periodic reports. The second one is the Certificate of Charitable Registration. So in order to be able to solicit donations in the state of Colorado, you have to be registered with the state. I believe it costs $10. It's a fairly easy process, but those are the 2 different certificates we're asking from our 501c3s.
And legally, we can't give you a grant if you don't have them. If we had a really sad situation a couple of years ago where somebody didn't know that they were supposed to have charitable solicitations filed, and we couldn't even review that application. So it really does matter. This is not one where we ding you a point. We simply won't be able to review your proposal at all.
And we did just get another question from Lauren at Simba, and she asks about needing to be from within the last 5 years. And Lauren, those actually need to be current. Those are annual certificates that you should be getting from the state. Your IRS letter is what needs to be dated in the last 5 years. Your IRS verification letter or certificate, whatever they call that.
And glory be, we're not asking for your IRS letter.
Right, right.
You can always go online with the federal government and find out if you are or aren't. Most of you we know, and we know are okay, so don't worry about that. if you're brand new to us, that's going to be one of the questions I will ask you, though, when you call me, just to verify that you are legitimate 501c3. And Alicia, in doing due diligence on all of your applications when they come in, does check. So let us know, but you don't have to submit it this year.
So Rita just asked, if you fall under a larger organization like the school district, do you need to get those certificates? Actually, Rita, those are just for the 501c3 organizations. Since you're kind of a quasi-governmental agency, you won't have anything like that.
Right. The public entities, the library, the school district, county, don't file. We know that they're exempt, and you don't need to get anything from them.
And just a word on the IRS letter about the 5-year thing. That's just kind of a best practice. You're going to want to have an updated IRS, what do they even call it? The determination letter. There you go. Verifying that you are every 5 years. We're not the only funder that asks for that. It's actually a fairly common question.
Yeah, we're not trying to be jerks and just make you do extra work. Okay, then I'm just gonna tell you what the review criteria are, but it would be really helpful if I had them in front of me. And I do now. Okay, so there are 4. They're slightly different. And each of them, from what you've seen in the past, and each of them is tied to one of your 4 questions. So there are 4 review criteria. The first one, we ask the reviewers to give you up to 10 points about how clear you are about the population you serve and the need that you are addressing for that population. So clarity about the population served and their need, 10 points. The second one is 20 points because it's really the essence of who you are and what you do. Description of the applicant or group, what you do, and your impact to date. So in the years that you've existed, what have you done? I mean, do you feed people? Do you help people grow gardens? Do you give people legal information? Do you house people? Do you open their minds to creativity? What is it that you do? And do you offer classes? Is it one-on-one? You know, what are your program areas? And what difference have you made over the course of your existence? 20 points. And then here is a note to the reviewers. We're going to say, consider, for example, alignment with mission, how many years they've served the community, clarity about what they actually do, and specificity about their impact. And once again, these are going to be posted online, and they'll be in my notes that I'll be posting as soon as we can get them up. The third one, also 10 points, is the impact of COVID-19 on you right now. And here we say to the reviewers, consider, for instance, the group's finances, impact on programming, fundraising, staff, and ways that they are confronting uncertainty. And number 4, possible impact of COVID in the future. I know that there are some groups who have said they're okay right now. They've got reserves. They're a winter sports organization, so they're not doing programming right now. But oh my gosh, they do most of their fundraising in the summer in order to get ready for next fall and winter. So, and that we can't say with any certainty at all. So the 4th one is the possible impact of COVID in the future, also 10 points. Consider, for example, whether the group is realistic and creative about possible alternative futures, considering different fundraising strategies. Here's where the mantra that we hear in the panel again and again and again, hope is not a strategy. So considering fundraising strategies, rethinking its role in the community if needed, or projecting that they're able to continue uninterrupted. There's no right answer here. It all has to do with you. So I'm just going to recap them again because I know you're taking notes and I talk fast. The first is 10 points, clarity about the population served and their need. Number 2, description of the group and what it does and the impact you've made to date. That's 20 points. Impact of COVID now, up to 10 points. Possible impact of COVID for your future, 10 points. And finally, just the timeline, and then I'll pause for questions again. The timeline is pretty much what we've always had. We're trying to figure out what to speed it up, and for a whole bunch of reasons, it just can't be done. The deadline is still 11:59 p.m. on May 15th. The reviewers are going to meet on the 22nd. The board meets on June the 25th to approve things. And the only way that we're able to speed it up this year is, you know, we usually give you your checks in the grants celebration in the middle of July. And here we're making the assumption that the board is going to take the reviewers' recommendations and go, good job, people, no changes. My guess is that Alicia will have your checks ready to be mailed the next day, if it's at all possible. So you should have your check prior to the 1st of July if you were successful. So I'll pause there. And Alicia, are there any other questions, or the field is open? Because that's pretty much what I've got to say. Oh, yeah, but there's always, another of the ways I drive my colleagues crazy is I say, I'm done now. Oh, one last thing. I think this is the last thing. How much is available this year? That's the killer question, because honestly, we have no idea. We do know the way that our grants kitty gets put together is that Pam and Lauren do a lot of fundraising throughout the year. And so that's kind of an annual amount that's determined by the success of our fundraising. Now we've got in hand pretty much the same amount that we did last year. But on the other hand, some of the pledges from certain donors, it's possible they won't come in because at the last minute, they'll say, I've just got to give the money to food, health, and safety. So we believe we're going to have at least as much as we had last year. We want to think that. And in the past, the guidelines have said amounts are typically from $1,000 to $7,000. What you will see in the guidelines is it is likely that our grant awards this year will be more modest because we just don't know how much money we're going to have. And since we've lifted the sit-out rule, and since we know that there may be newcomers this year, there may be more demand than we've had in past years. And if I could look into the crystal ball and give you an answer, I would. So I'm not trying to tap dance because we just don't know. But when you ask, and now I'm talking to the nonprofits, you know, you'll tell us what your current year budget is. We're not worrying about your next year's budget, unless you happen to have it, but I doubt if you do. Your current year budget, and then you simply ask us for a flat amount. So your budget may be $250,000, and you may simply request $6,000. Like I say, you don't have to tell us where you're going to spend this, pick an amount and ask for that. But please understand that we've given very few $7,000 grants in the past and aren't likely maybe to even be giving any this year. I just wish I knew. We're hoping that with this COVID category, we can be relieving some of the urgent health and safety needs. And this hardly makes up for it, but I guess that's the reality, is hoping that we may not be able to give you as many dollars, but at least they can be super flexible. So I would love to say we can write a check for 100 grand for all of you, but maybe next year. So that's really what I wanted to say. And Alicia, what other questions are there, or Is there anything I haven't been clear about? And you know, any of us is here for you. Alicia is kind of the point person if you're having any technical problems. I'm the first place to start if you have content problems or if you're a first-time applicant. And our fingers are crossed that this can at least meet a need and that you can continue to do the awesome, awesome work that you do. Questions, Alicia, or?
There aren't any right now. We can give people a couple minutes to mull all of that over.
Or if you want to unmute yourself at this point, I mean, that's pretty much all I had to say. Anybody who needs to leave, feel free, and we will try to have this all posted by the end of the week if we can. Alicia's amazing, but she is only one human being.
I am shooting for tomorrow. That's what I will give
told you
people.
she's
I know
amazing.
people want to get a jump, and I certainly appreciate that because there's a lot of other funding opportunities you're probably pursuing right now too. So
Yeah. Yep, we do have to get the COVID-19 recovery grants posted first because that deadline's next week.
Maryo, I will ask one question. On question number 2, what do you do and what difference do you make? You said story, and I know a lot of times working with the foundation, story usually comes with our report when we're done expending our funds versus the story coming in the request. Obviously, I understand the question itself, but quite often the story component comes in the heartstrings reporting out afterwards. Do you want a story in there?
Well, there's two things. Yeah, I'm glad you asked that, Ben, because there is one more thing. You probably know that we do use, that the reviewers have access to your final reports. And so if you have a long heartstring story, I mean, I will tell you guys, I hope it's okay with you. Ben is sort of the master of the powerful story. I remember a couple of years ago in his final report, he told us the story about the single dad who snowmobiled. For those of you who don't know him, he runs a preschool in Crested Butte. A single dad who snowmobiled down from Ewell every morning to bring his child to school because that's how important the school was to him. Well, that's a hell of a story. It doesn't even take that much time to write. That's a one-sentence story. So if you have a long, powerful story and you want to take the time to put it in your final report, please do, because the reviewers will see it. But if you have just a for instance that's short and can illustrate something about the impact of what you do, and if you can work it into your 125 words, more power to you.
well, and Maryo, would that be a good place to, because MJ Pickett with Cold Harbor had asked me, you know, they've come a long way in the last year or whatever, and she wants to share that. And so I recommended that she maybe use one of her optional uploads as a way to tell a story that might not be able to work in anywhere else. So you could probably use that, Ben.
That's, so that's 3 different, short, shorter, and shortest, or long, medium, super short. But yeah, that's a good point. Or if you have lots of data and you've already got it consolidated, feel free to put that in an upload too. Thanks for asking that. So yes, however short your final report is, if you have 5 extra minutes on it, use it for the story. Any other questions?
Dave asks, are optional uploads for nonprofits only? And they are not. Every type is going to be able to have those 2 optional uploads. And they could be videos, they could be photos, they could be, you know, whatever. It's up to you. Yep, up to you.
And if you've gotten, I mean, I see a couple of people on the line who have gotten a COVID-19 recovery grant. It's not going to affect how this is going to be reviewed. You could get a community grant as well as a recovery grant. That's fine. It's not going to lower you in the ranking or disadvantage you in any way. Anything else? Okay, I think every single one of you knows how to reach me, 641-3570 or Maryo at CFGV.org. And if you have a technical question, for goodness sake, don't direct it at me. Because I wouldn't be able to answer it correctly or well, and I'd end up referring you to Alicia anyway.
And if you have any budget questions, you can refer them to me too.
Sure. Yeah, she used to work for county finance, you know. So I'll respond to the heartstring. She needs to help you with the money.
Yeah, Mario's our artist. I'm our money gal.
Yeah, I sob over you at night.
We all do. You guys are doing some really amazing stuff. Thank you for hanging in there.
You bet. Feel free to contact any of us at any time. And we love you, and you're doing God's work out there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Bye-bye.